Alrighty, hi everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Portfolio Manager 101, the basics of creating your account and sharing your data. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to join us today. So I would like to start by pointing out that the session is for anyone who is new to EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager and building owners who are just getting started or need a refresher on how to comply with the state's benchmarking program. In today's session, we'll be going through the core functionalities of Energy Star Portfolio Manager. You will learn all of the essential how-to information so you can start tracking your building's metrics and comply with the Colorado benchmarking program. I would also like to note that Energy Star does offer short videos on the topics we will be going over today on their website, and we also have an FAQ section dedicated to Energy Star Portfolio Manager in our Beam and Knowledge Base FAQ library. And Olivia will be going to be putting links in the chat for that knowledge base. All right, so what is Portfolio Manager? Portfolio Manager is often used as a management tool that's just one part of a broader strategic plan to reduce utility consumption and costs. It is used to compare, measure, and track consumption over time, set baselines, goals, and targets, generate metrics that reveal underperforming properties, as well as many other functions. In the case of Building Performance Colorado, Portfolio Manager is used to benchmark your property, as this tool provides a standardized format for submitting energy data, which helps to make it clear for both you as the building owner and the state to review. So Portfolio Manager also offers more than 300 metrics to assess your building's performance. For energy, not only can you track your usage from natural gas to solar, but Portfolio Manager also provides metrics such as source and site energy and weather normalized energy. While water and waste are not required to be submitted to the state for compliance, you can also track your water and waste usage in Portfolio Manager. Portfolio Manager also offers several ways to compare energy, water, and waste. For all three, you can use Portfolio Manager to establish a baseline. The baseline should comprise of 12 complete calendar months of data and is a starting point against which to compare future consumption. Once the 12-month baseline is established, Portfolio Manager can be used to establish target reduction goals for energy based on desired energy use reduction from your baseline, reductions compared to a national median, or a target Energy Star score. Your 2021 data is what the state will use as a baseline to analyze the progress you have made towards your 2026 and 2030 targets. If you have your 2021 data inputted into Portfolio Manager, you can use its available metrics and tools to see how your current metrics compare to your 2021 numbers and the progress your property is making towards your 2026 and 2030 targets. Portfolio Manager also allows you to compare a property's baseline to the median energy use of a national sample of similar buildings, which mostly comes from a dataset called CBEX, or the Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey. Now, let's dive into what you need to get started in Portfolio Manager. First off, you need the property's primary function, name, address and postal code, the year built, and gross floor area. You will also need your property's use details, which can vary based on the property type you selected for your building. For example, the use details in an office building include things like the number of computers, while a multifamily housing building would include a use detail such as the number of bedrooms. These details are considered to be the drivers of energy use in your building. Lastly, you will need your energy consumption data for the calendar year of 2024, and this should be 12 full months of data. This typically will come from your utility bills. Now, I do want to point out that if you are a building owner who plans to work with a consultant or third party to benchmark your building, the recommended best practice is for the building owner to create the property in their account, and they'll go ahead and share it with the outside party. I do want to point out that portfolio manager data is proprietary and belongs to the person who is the portfolio manager account owner or the property data administrator. All right, now I think we have a good background on what portfolio manager is. I will begin the portfolio manager demo portion of today's training session, and we'll start with logging into portfolio manager. All right. So I want to start here on the Energy Star Commercial Buildings landing page, and you can navigate to the benchmark page here by clicking into this benchmark highlighted text. You can also log into Portfolio Manager directly here at the bottom of the screen. Let's go ahead and click into this benchmark text here because I would like to show you this page with tons of Portfolio Manager information. And I also want to point out this training tab here on the left-hand side of the screen. This is just another page with a hub of resources about Portfolio Manager functionalities, from how-to guides, demo videos, etc. Now let's head back to the benchmark page here, and we'll start logging into Portfolio Manager. Now, if you don't have a Portfolio Manager account just yet, that is not a problem. It's fairly easy to create an account. We'll just go ahead and click on the Create Account blue text here. And you'll see it opens up a new tab where you can create an account in the Portfolio Manager site. So this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. You'll just fill in these prompts with the relevant information. I do want to note that the red asterisks do mean that these prompts are required to be filled out. So once you have all of these prompts filled in, I'm going to scroll down here. You'll just go ahead and click that blue Create My Account button, and you'll be all ready to go. All right, so I already have an existing account that is already logged in to save some time here. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate over. Now, you can immediately see here that Portfolio Manager is run on a tab structure, which makes it pretty straightforward to navigate. Our home base here would be the My Portfolio tab, which you can see shows a dashboard of properties that you have added to your account, listed in this light blue table to the right of the screen. Scrolling down on this page here, you will see this Manage Portfolio box, and this is where you can transfer ownership of a property, upload and/or update multiple properties at once, download your entire portfolio, set baselines and/or targets, add sample properties to your account, or delete properties from your account. I'm going to scroll back up here and let's head on over to this Sharing tab. Now here is where you can share or edit access to properties with other Portfolio Manager users. You can also share your access to properties or simply share your entire Portfolio Manager account. That's usually with your utility or service provider, for the purpose of exchanging data. You will also be using the Sharing tab to submit your data to the Colorado Energy Office for benchmarking compliance, which we will go into a little later in this session. If you are solely using Portfolio Manager to benchmark for the state, the My Portfolio and Sharing tab should be the only two tabs here you should be concerned with. Now, I do want to point out a few more features here before we dive into creating a property in Portfolio Manager. The first one is our Notification Center, which you will find on the top of your web page here. And you'll see that there are three tabs: your incoming requests, outgoing requests, and notices. This outgoing requests tab here is fairly helpful as it will show your share requests going out to the state. The second feature I want to point out here in Portfolio Manager is the Help Center, which is towards the top right of the web page. And here is just another hub of resources for Portfolio Manager users. As you can see, it contains a multitude of helpful guidance, such as the Frequently Asked Questions database, the Portfolio Manager glossary, a table here on the side of technical references, and much, much more. So this can be another great place for you to go if you're ever lost on how to use Portfolio Manager. All right, so now that's about it for the structure of Portfolio Manager that you need to know to comply with the state. So let's go ahead and step into how to add a property and enter its use details in Portfolio Manager. So let's go ahead and head back to the My Portfolio tab. And to start off adding a property, we'll hit the Add a Property blue button here at the top left. And you'll see we're brought to this page, Set up a property. Let's get started. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, and you'll see the three sections we need to fill out. The first one being your property type. The second one is your property's buildings. And the third one is your property's construction status. So let's start off with selecting your property type here at the top. I am going to go ahead and select the multifamily housing property type. But of course, please select whatever property type is most pertinent to your property. And as you can see here in this dropdown, there are a ton of property types to choose from, most of which correlate with the Building Performance Colorado program. All right, moving on here, we'll now select the number of physical buildings that are part of our property. And as you can see here, we have three options: none, one, or more than one. If you are selecting the more than one option here, aka you are benchmarking more than one building or a campus property, I do want to point out that a campus property should include all properties on the campus that share an energy meter. All buildings over 50,000 square feet need their own building ID and will pay one annual fee per building ID. If you have buildings smaller than 50,000 square feet in your campus, but they're metered with a building over the 50,000 square feet requirement, they do not have to pay a fee and are not required to have a Colorado building ID. But those buildings should be included as part of the total gross floor area. All right, to keep this example simple today, I'll just go ahead and select that my multifamily housing property is a single building. Our last section here is your property's construction status. For the sake of today's training, I'm going to select this last option here, which is test property, since this property I'm creating is not real. But for all of your buildings, you should be selecting this first option here, which is existing, meaning that your property is built, occupied, and/or being used. I'm going to scroll down a little bit further here, and we'll go ahead and click that Get Started blue button. Now we're brought to a page titled Set up a property, basic property information. And here is where you'll be providing the basic information about your property. So let's go ahead and add in the property name. I'll just call this BM101, April 22. We'll select our country. I'll enter in a street address here, city, and state, and postal code. And we'll enter in our year built here. I do want to point out that your year built should be the year that your property was constructed. But if your property has undergone a complete renovation that included gutting and rebuilding the interior of your property, you can use that year of renovation for your year built value rather than the year that your property was constructed. All right, moving on here, let's enter in our gross floor area. I'm going to deselect this here since we don't have irrigated area, and I'll hit 100 for our occupancy for this property. Scrolling down here, you'll see the second box, which is our standard ID section. And this is where you can add in your Colorado building ID if you already have one associated with the property's address. So you'll go into the state/province drop-down section and hit the Colorado building ID selection, and you'll use this prompt on the right-hand side to enter in your Colorado building ID. Now, I do want to note that Portfolio Manager is case sensitive, so I do encourage you all to ensure that when you are entering in your building ID, you use all capital letters. So for example, your building ID should look something like this when you type it into Portfolio Manager, rather than looking like something like this with a lowercase c. If you are curious on what your Colorado building ID is, I do recommend checking out our Google Sheets building ID lookup, which Olivia will put the link to in the chat. And if you can't find your building address in the building ID lookup, please reach out to our help desk to fill out the request for building ID form, and we'll have your building added to our program. I do also want to point out that if you have an ID associated with a local reporting program, such as Fort Collins or Denver, you can request to use that local reporting ID for state reporting as well. And you can request that when you are adding your building to our program. I do want to mention though, if you are using the same ID for local and state reporting, you will need to enter in the same ID twice. So once in this city/town heading for Denver, let's say, you'll enter in your building ID here, and you'll also enter in that same building ID in the state/province heading. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete both of these since this is just a fake property that I'm creating and doesn't have a Colorado ID associated with it. All right. Now I just want to hit on this last section here, which is, do any of these apply? And this is just a check box selection here, which you can select if and your property has any of these property types associated with it, and it'll just automatically add that property type into your property for you. So that can be a good shortcut way to add one of these property types. Alrighty, now let's move on by hitting that continue blue button. I won't save that address. Okay, so now we're brought to the page, set up a property, how is it used? You'll see in this top box labeled Basic Information. This is all our information that we have filled out on our previous page. I'm going to scroll down here, and you'll see that we can begin entering in our use details for this property. If you have any questions about the definitions for each of these use details, you can also hover over each of these use detail names here, and you'll see that Portfolio Manager gives you a helpful pop-up bubble with the Portfolio Manager definition. You can also click directly on the use detail term itself, and you'll see that Portfolio Manager will take you to the full definition in the Portfolio Manager glossary. So that's just another functionality that Portfolio Manager provides if you're ever confused about the use details. All right, so let's go ahead and start entering in the use details for this property. Now, I do want to point out here for if you do have a multifamily housing property and you're entering in your units for low, mid, and high rise, that it does not matter what floor your units are on in a multifamily property. The units are classified based on the total number of floors in the building that they're located on. So if you have a building, let's say that is 5 to 9 stories, so a mid-rise building here, all of your units should be entered into the number of units in a mid-rise building. It shouldn't be spread out between low, mid, and high rise. All right, we'll keep on going here. I'll say we have 16 laundry hookups in all units, 0 in common areas, and we'll say 100% of the property can be heated and 100% of the property can be cooled. Now, I do want to note that the Colorado Energy Office may flag your property if you use the Use a Default checkbox, as you can see towards the right of the prompts here. So if you do need to check this box, I would make sure that you come back to this property's use detail value here after you verify that the use detail value is correct, and you can verify with your property team or whomever, and you would enter in the accurate value, deselect the Use a Default checkbox, and save those edits. And the same thing goes for this temporary value column here on the right-hand side. Please ensure that you come back to whatever use detail value, correct it, uncheck this box, and save those edits. All right, now that we have all of our use details entered in here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit and we'll hit the Add Property blue button. And as you can see here, we are now brought to the profile of our newly created property record. And you'll also notice this new property level tab structure. And like the above Portfolio Manager tab structure, we have several options to choose from here. So first we have our Summary tab, which we're currently on. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. You'll see our metrics summary table, and that'll populate once we input some more information into this property. You'll see our data quality checker, which we go over more in depth in our Correcting Common Errors webinar on May 6th and May 27th. So if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and register for those in our knowledge base. We also have this Sharing This Property box, which will take us to the Sharing tab that we discussed earlier. I'm going to scroll back up here and we'll head on over to our Details tab. So this tab has all of the information that we just entered into this property. And I do want to point out right here, we have our property uses and use details table. And if you click this triangle here on the side, you'll see that it opens up a drop-down of all of the use details we just entered. Now, if you had perhaps initially entered in the incorrect information for the property, that is no problem at all. We can directly edit our use detail values right here using the action drop-down selection. So if you click into this drop-down, you'll just hit that edit use details selection, and it'll take you right back to the page where you can edit your use details. Additionally, if you had accidentally left out a property type, you can use this Add Another Type of Use dropdown to select whatever property type you might have missed, and then you would go ahead and hit the Add button. All right, and I also want to point out on the left-hand side here, I'll scroll down a little bit, you can use these Edit blue buttons to edit the relevant information for our basic information such as construction status, self-reported GFA, occupancy, and then our unique identifiers box. You can edit this to include your state or local building IDs here. All right, scrolling back up a little bit here, you'll see that there are several other tabs here at the property level. We have energy, emissions, water, waste and materials, goals, and design. But the tabs that we'll mostly be concerned with when we're reporting our 2024 data to the state will just be this first three, the summary, details, and energy tabs. So let's head on over to our energy tab, and we'll start entering in our energy data. Scrolling down a little bit here, there are 5 ways to enter in your bill data. The first method is the manual way, which we'll walk through today. We also have a spreadsheet option listed under options 2 and 3, which we'll briefly go over today as well. And that's where you can upload a spreadsheet that includes your properties or multiple properties energy data. You can also hire an organization to electronically enter your data, namely service product providers. And lastly, you can see if your utility offers electronic data delivery as well. So Olivia will put a link in the chat to the Portfolio Manager FAQ of the list of utilities that offer aggregate data uploads. And she'll also be putting a link in the chat to our knowledge base of utility companies across the state of Colorado on their methods of delivery for utility data. So now that you are aware of the various methods, you can enter in your energy data. Let's start off manually entering in our energy data into Portfolio Manager. Now you can get started either by hitting this Enter Your Bills blue button here, or this Add a Meter blue button. Either way, you'll be taken to this page titled Get Started Setting Up Meters for whatever your property name is here. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, and you'll see this box of sources of your property's energy. And you can see here there are a ton of energy sources here to choose from. So I'm going to start off by selecting electric. And you'll see here that Portfolio Manager gives you a second set of options here, specifying if your electric energy is purchased from the grid, generated from on-site solar, or generated from on-site wind. For today's example, I'll be selecting purchase from the grid. And then you'll see here that Portfolio Manager gives you another prompt to select how many meters of your energy source you would like to add to your property. For today's example, I'll keep it simple at 1, but of course, edit this as needed. I do want to point out that you can add multiple sources of energy on this page, so I'll go ahead and add a natural gas meter here as well. And again, I'll keep it as 1 meter, but you can edit this however you would like. Now, once you have the sources of energy for your property all checked on this page, I'm going to scroll down here and we'll hit the Get Started blue button. Now you'll be brought to the About Your Meters page for your property. And this is where you'll need to fill in some information, such as the meter name, units, date meter became active, etc. So you can click into each of these boxes here to start directly editing any of these prompts here. And you can personalize your meter name here to help you differentiate between meters. And while you can put any name into this field, I would like to note that it is best practice to make the meter name the same as what is written on your energy bills. So it could look something like this: utility bill name. All right, so for the unit option here, I also recommend going with whatever is on your utility bill. So let's say for our electric grid meter here, our utility bills are under the kilowatt hour units. So that's what we'll select for our units here. And that just makes it easier for you. So you're not calculating conversions from one unit to another. All right, then you'll want to enter in the date the meter became active. Now say for this example, my electric grid meter started the 1st of January 2024. In this next column here, you'll check or uncheck this box depending if your meter is in use or not. And of course, if your meter is no longer active, you would unselect this checkbox and use this next column here to enter in the date your meter became inactive. If you have a meter that is tracking something like propane or diesel delivery, you would want to select this checkbox here under the Enter as Delivery column, and that will make sure that Portfolio Manager knows it's tracking it as a delivery rather than monthly utility billing. And this last section here, I'm going to scroll to the right, you'll see our custom meter IDs, and this can also be helpful to differentiate your different meters on your property. All right, I'm going to scroll back to the left here, and we'll add the same information for our natural gas meter. So I'll change the meter name to reflect whatever would be hypothetically on my utility bill for this meter. I'll select units based on whatever's on my utility bill. And then I'll enter in the date the meter became active for this meter. All right. So once you have all of the information entered you would like to have associated with each of your meters here, we'll go ahead and hit the Create Meters blue button on the bottom right-hand corner. And you'll see we're brought to this page, Select Meters to Include in Metrics. This is pretty self-explanatory, where we will select the meters that are currently active at our property using this checkbox selection on the left-hand side. And then using this prompt here, we'll select that these meters account for the total energy consumption for our property. Of course, if these meters do not account for the total energy consumption for your property, you would select this bottom option. But hopefully you'll have all of the meters associated with your property that accounts for all energy in your property. All right, once we have everything selected here, we'll go ahead and hit the Apply Selections blue button. Now you'll see we're brought to this page, Manage Bills for your property. So this is where we will enter in our actual meter usage information. If you have your utility bills and you're planning on manually entering in your data, This is where you would pull them out and start entering in your consumption. I do want to point out this basic meter information heading here. If you click into it, you'll see all of our meter information we just entered in on our previous pages. I would like to note here that your first meter entry does not have to correlate with your date your meter became active here. So let's say for an example, your meter became active sometime in 1975. You do not have to start with your first meter entry as the date in 1975 and work your way all the way up to 2025. Of course, the metrics portfolio manager would create off of all of that data would be incredibly insightful. You do not have to enter in all of that data. For Portfolio Manager to actually compute your metrics, you only need 12 months of calendar data. And of course, for this Colorado building performance reporting season, you will need only your 12 months of 2024 calendar year data. And I do want to point out this meter selection here at the top, and you can see there is this lighter gray box, and this is where you can navigate between your energy meters without having to go back into your property's profile. So you'll see here, I can click onto the electric grid meter, and I'm immediately taken to the electric grid meters page. All right, so let's go ahead and start manually entering in our data. Our first step here would be to click to add an entry blue text here. Alternatively, we can also hit this add another entry blue highlighted text. So you see once I click that, Portfolio Manager provides us with an empty row. And our start date here will be whatever your first utility bill is for 2024. And let's just say, to keep this example straightforward, our utility bill for 2024 started January 1st. I'm going to click out of this row here, and you'll see that Portfolio Manager auto-populates our end date for us. Of course, if this end date does not correlate with your utility billing, you'll just go ahead, click into that cell, and you can manually edit this as needed. All right, so let's go ahead and enter in our usage for this time period. Of course, going off of our utility billing, I'm going to click out of this. And I do want to point out these other columns here, total cost, demand, demand cost. These columns are not required to be filled in for Portfolio Manager to compute your metrics or for benchmarking compliance. But I do want to say that these columns do provide some helpful insights, especially that total cost column if you want to track your patterns over time. But again, these columns here are totally voluntary. Now I do also want to point out this estimation column here. If you don't have your utility bills for a certain cycle quite yet, you can definitely enter in a placeholder value here and then select that estimation checkbox. Then you would go check in with your utility company to ensure that you have the correct energy usage value for that meter entry in question. I would definitely ensure that you come back to your meter after your utility has confirmed that usage value and then correct that value as necessary and then deselect that estimation checkbox. If you leave estimated values in your meter for the 2024 calendar year, this could prevent your building from achieving compliance for this reporting season. Okay, so let's say that this meter entry we just put into our electric meter here was incorrect. To delete a meter entry, you'll see towards the bottom of this table here, we have a delete selected entries blue highlighted text. So to delete this entry we just inputted, we'll go ahead, use this checkbox here on the left-hand side to select that row, and then we'll hit delete selected entries. You'll see here that Portfolio Manager wants to ensure that you want to delete the meter entry. We'll go ahead and hit the Continue button, and you'll see that that meter entry was deleted. All right, so maybe you don't want to manually input your energy data directly into Portfolio Manager. Another method of inputting energy data is using the single meter spreadsheet upload method. To download the spreadsheet upload template, you'll click onto this single meter spreadsheet blue highlighted text, and that will automatically download the spreadsheet for you. To save some time today, I already have one spreadsheet upload template downloaded to my computer here. And you can see these columns here accurately reflect that Portfolio Manager meter setup we saw in our browser. You'll also see here that our first three columns are required to be filled in, indicated by the required in the headings, and then these other columns here are optional. And you'll also see here that Portfolio Manager provides helpful notes for each cell, describing what you should be filling in each of these columns, and also the format that they need to successfully upload this spreadsheet to Portfolio Manager. Okay, so once you have the spreadsheet download, you can go ahead and enter in your data into this spreadsheet. I will say that the spreadsheet template can be a very quick method to enter in your billing data if you receive spreadsheet deliveries of your energy data from your utility. You can use the utility provided spreadsheet to directly copy and paste your data into this spreadsheet template. Again, to save some time today, I already have a pre-filled in template here for my electric grid meter. So once you have all of your data entered in for your 2024 calendar year, your spreadsheet upload should look something like this. To show everyone a quick shortcut on how to upload this data quickly to your meter in Portfolio Manager without directly uploading the spreadsheet to the Portfolio Manager tool, you can actually just directly copy all of the data you entered into this spreadsheet here. I'll hit Control C here, and we'll head back to our meter, and we'll add a new entry to our electric grid meter here. I'll go into the start date prompt here, and I'll do a Control V. And you'll see here that Portfolio Manager automatically populates all of the data that you had copied on your spreadsheet template. So that can be another quick way to enter in your data into your meter for the full 2024 calendar year. All right, so now that we have all this data in here, I'm going to scroll down and we'll hit the Save Bills blue button. Okay, so now let's head to our natural gas meter and do the same thing. We'll follow the same spreadsheet copy and paste process we did earlier with our electric meter. I'll just be going through this a little bit quickly since we just went over this. Again, I have a pre-filled template for my natural gas meter. I do want to call out here that in this spreadsheet, we have our billing date going from mid-month to mid-month. In cases where the utility company bills from mid-month to mid-month, you will want to ensure that you are fully capturing the 2024 calendar year. So in this case, we're making sure that we're capturing the full start of 2024 data, starting with our start date from December 16th, 2023, and our end date of January 15th, 2024. So that captures the start of 2024. And our last meter entry here, you'll see that we start December 16th, 2024, and we end January 15th, 2025. So that captures our end date of 2024 on December 31st. All right, so same process as before here. I'll go ahead, Control C, all of this data here. Head back to my Portfolio Manager. Click to add an entry. Click into my start date Control V, and you'll see all of that data automatically populates. Alrighty, now that we have all of that in, we'll hit our Save Bills blue button, and we're all set. Okay, so let's head back to our properties profile now by clicking our hyperlinked property name at the top of our page. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. And you'll see here in our metrics summary box in our summary tab that everything has populated now that we have all of our energy data in our property. You can see our source EUI, site EUI, total GHG emissions, etc., all of which were calculated from the meter data we just entered in. I'm going to scroll back up, and you'll see this box here on the top right corner. I do want to call out that this metric here is editable if you hit that Change Metric button here. You'll see here you can select any of these metrics from this pop-up window. I'll hit Weather Normalized Site EUI, hit Select Metric, and you'll see that it automatically changes. So this can be helpful just to see whatever metric is most important to you immediately once you are in your property record. Okay, now let's head to our Energy tab here to see some more visualizations of the energy data. I particularly want to point out this energy use by calendar month chart. If you hit the Refresh Chart button here, you'll see that Portfolio Manager again gives you a very helpful visualization of your energy consumption over time. So this can be pretty helpful to look at when you are tracking your consumption to meet those targets in 2026 and 2030. All right, last thing I want to point out here on the Energy tab, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. You'll see this Utility and Weather box. And this populates based on your property's location by zip code. So this can be pretty helpful if you want to reach out to whatever utility through Portfolio Manager. And also it helps to provide some additional information to your property. All right, now we have this property all ready to go here. We have our property type established, we have our use details, and our energy consumption values for the calendar year of 2024. So our next step here will then be to share this property with the Colorado Energy Office. Now, if you don't have CEO as a contact already in your portfolio manager, you will need to go in and request to be connected with them. To do so, we'll head to the top right of our page and select the Contacts blue text. You'll be brought to this page here titled My Contacts and Organizations. So we'll go ahead and start by adding new contacts/connections, this blue button right here. And this is where you can add a contact by searching by their name, organization, portfolio manager username, or email. You can also use this page to add information for non-portfolio manager users if you would like to share your property with someone that does not have a portfolio manager account. Now, since CEO is already an existing portfolio manager user, we'll be using this first top box here to find them. The best way to search for a CEO's portfolio manager account is to search by their username. So we'll search in this username box right here, and their username is CO_benchmarking. Once you have that typed in, we'll go ahead and hit the search blue button. And you'll see that multiple contacts come up under that CO_benchmarking username. The one you should be connecting with is this one right here, which is the State of Colorado, Colorado Energy Office. And you'll also see that the portfolio manager username is in the parentheses. And you'll see here that I'm already connected to the state, but you would just hit that blue connect button for that connection request to be sent to the state's portfolio manager account. Okay, so after the state accepts this connection request you send out to them, we can go ahead and share our property with them. And I do want to note that sharing your property with the state acts essentially as a submit button for benchmarking reporting. So let's go to our sharing tab here to share our property with the state. And to start sharing our property, we'll go ahead and hit this top blue button right here in our sharing tab, which is share or edit access to a property. And you'll see here on this page, Portfolio Manager splits this up into 3 steps. The first step being select properties. So we'll go ahead and hit the select properties blue button here. And you'll see here we can use the checkboxes here on the left-hand side of the screen to select the property or properties we would like to share with the Portfolio Manager user. So for today, I'll just be selecting the property we created. And then we'll hit the Apply Selection blue button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And you'll see here that it will populate right here as our selected properties count of 1. And that's how you know you correctly selected the right amount of properties you want to share with the state. All right, and then we'll move on to our second step here, which is select people/accounts. We'll just go ahead, click onto our CO_benchmarking user. Scrolling down further, the last step here is choose permissions. For correctly sharing your data to the state, we'll be hitting that second option, which is personalized sharing and exchange data. So once we have all of these 3 steps filled out and completed, we'll hit the continue blue button. All right, now we're brought to selecting permissions for each contact being the state here. So to correctly set up our settings to share our property with the state, we'll go ahead, hit this exchange data button here on the right-hand side of our screen. And this brings us to a page where we can personalize permissions for the state to look at our property. All right, so for our property information, we'll be hitting read only access. For our meter information for both our electric grid and natural gas meters, again, it's read only access. For goals, improvements, and checklists, this selection will be none, and the same for recognition. So again, property information and all meter information should be read only access. Goals, improvements, and checklists and recognition, you can select none access. All right, scrolling down, we have one more selection here, and that is the share forward option. And this should be yes. So once you have all of these selections filled out, you can go ahead and hit the Apply Selections and Authorize Exchange blue button. Okay, and those are the specific permission settings you need to correctly submit your property or properties to the state. And if you got a little bit lost there on the permission selection process, we do have documentation that outlines each step I just took, which Olivia will put in the chat here. And of course, we always have various resources available on our knowledge base FAQ site. Okay, so once you have everything set up here, you'll go ahead and hit the blue button, Share Properties. And that will successfully submit your property to the state for benchmarking compliance. All right, so now hopefully everyone has a better grasp on how to navigate and use Energy Star Portfolio Manager and how to submit your property to the Colorado Building Performance Program for annual reporting. Okay, I'm going to head back to our slides here and scroll through, so please bear with me here. And again, this slide deck is also available on our knowledge base as well. And you can see here there's a lot of helpful screenshots to help you walk through the process. Okay, so here's a recap before we end today's session. So today we learned how to navigate Portfolio Manager, add a property, enter in its use details, enter in our energy consumption, and then share our property with the state. Now, if you have any other further questions about your property or specific nuances that you would like to go over one-on-one with one of our staff members here, we hold weekly office hours every Wednesday from 11 to 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So Olivia will put the link to our knowledge base page for office hours in the chat. And if you are curious about other webinars we will be hosting in the coming weeks or previous training recordings, we also have a whole page dedicated to just that in our knowledge base. And Olivia will put the link in the chat as well to that. Okay, and that is the end of today's session. I do want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to join us. I do want to point out that if you'd like to contact us via email or give us a call, our contact information is right here on this slide. Our phone lines are open from 9 to 5 every weekday. And Olivia will be putting a quick post-webinar survey form in the chat just before we begin our Q&A session of this webinar. So I would like to encourage you all to just take 30 seconds out of your time today to fill that out and let us know how we did and what other topics you'd be interested in hearing from us about in the future. All right, and also please feel free to put in any questions into the chat so we can get started with our Q&A session.